Yep.
4:30. 4:30 right on the dot. So let's do it. Thank you all for coming. The meeting is now called to order for the CAC on February 11th. Glad you all are in. We've got a full schedule, so I won't belabor anything a lot. Let's go ahead and let Cheryl take the roll, please. Oh, that was the young.
Doris, are you here, Doris? Doris right now. Ray.
Yes.
Ray is here. EJ Carroll.
Here.
Louise Edens.
Yes, here.
Craig is absent. Madeline.
Here.
Robin Gosney. Chris Jones.
Here.
Judy Jones.
Here.
John Norman said he will not be able to attend.
Oh,
Monette Parton.
Here.
Thank you. Here. Dick.
Here.
Valerie Rose. No Valerie? Dave Stevens.
Yeah.
All right. Dave
Somebody
Stevens.
else came in too.
so yeah, I think somebody just,
Daniel.
Daniel, welcome.
Daniel, are you here? Daniel? Daniel, I don't think you're here. Irene, have you made it in on the phone call? Irene?
I did. I'm on. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, you're coming in
Okay.
well.
How about us? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you really
Wonderful.
well.
So Daniel is the only person that I.
Did you catch her, Cheryl? Oh,
Hello, we have a guest.
oh, yeah.
Well, wonderful. Wonderful. So we've just done our roll call, and next up, of course, comes introduction of guests. So could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, Daniel. Daniel's here in person.
All right.
Oh, Daniel. Wonderful. Okay, and we do have a guest too.
Yeah, this is Sam Zimbabwe from Kimley Horn.
Hi, Sam.
Okay, Sam, thank you for coming with us. Do we have any other guests?
Hi, this is James Gomez, also with Kimley Horn.
And I'm sorry, run your name by me again.
Sure, it's James Gomez.
Okay, and spell that last name, please.
Sure, Gamez.
Okay, and then Sam, your last name, please.
My last name is just like the country, Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe. And then Haley is Haley Brey, Brey, is also here from Kimley Horn.
Brey. I remember you two from other sessions that we've had and the meetings, and I appreciate you all coming. This is wonderful. All right. So do we have any public commenters at this point? Either in the virtual world, or I don't think we have any in person. The train.
Yeah, our train is starting.
Be quiet, train. You do not, yeah. We'll take a pause for state identification. Yeah. All in the line of transportation. Okay, very good. Well, I take it we have no public commenters other than the train. So let's move on to the meeting minutes for January. Do we have any additions or corrections to those meeting minutes? Okay, hearing none, would someone like to bring a motion forward?
Madam Chair, yeah,
Yes.
Dave's first thing and I'll second it. Accepting this, right?
Accept them as submitted, and Dave would like to second it.
Dave's first and then I'm seconding.
Okay, and Chris a second. Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes as submitted for January, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Say nay.
Hey,
What? Don't you, yeah.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Thank you for approving these minutes. We really appreciate that. And then next up, we've got our consultants, and I appreciate you three being with us. And I think it's just great that you're coming. There's a lot of material to present. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, there is a lot to present. So let me jump right in. And I think I can share here. So let me share. You can, hopefully is that coming up for everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and for folks that are joining on the phone, I apologize that you may not be able to see these slides. And for those of you in the room, some things may be a little bit small, but we'll also be able to share these out after with you all. And if you have any questions, please just interrupt me or raise your hand, put something in the chat. Since I'm sharing my screen, I won't be able to see those things come in. I'm on one screen this evening, but just know that we want to hear your questions. So if you don't hesitate to interrupt me. So we wanted to talk with you about where we are with the long-range transit plan that we've been working on with Skagit Transit, give you a little walkthrough of the existing conditions, community feedback, some system-wide recommendations, and then some of where we go from here. And then James can talk through some route by route or parts of the county by parts of the county recommendations, because a lot of the things tie together. We started this about a year ago, last winter, diving into existing conditions and then doing some work on getting from community members and customers and all sorts of folks their vision around transit. We started to do some initial concept development and recommendations. We came back out in the fall, got more input, have been refining that, and now we're close to having a final report and some ideas about where the system can go. Overall, as we looked at the existing conditions and the system as a whole, and started to talk to folks, we saw really good existing coverage. The routes are serving places where people are most likely to ride transit in the county. They're serving priority populations and providing access to jobs. There's also really strong facilities for both riders and operators for a system of the size of Skagit Transit. And that's everything from Skagit Station to the Chuckanut Park and Ride. And then there's some opportunities for continued investment in those types of locations. Places like March Point Park and Ride are great to have those facilities. There can be some more investment there over time as well. Some of the challenges, and this was really reflected in what we heard from riders and people who maybe were interested in riding but weren't riding transit right now. Infrequent service, some connections were challenging, and some of the connections to other services, and then limited service on the weekends were really some of the real barriers. What we saw coming through in some of the data, but also some of what we heard from people. As I mentioned, we've been out for 2 really intensive rounds, and then Cheryl's been wearing out pairs of shoes, getting around the county, talking to folks outside of what we've been able to do. We got about 600 different responses through a number of different methods. We had online surveys, we did in-person workshops and open houses, we got written responses, we had an interactive map. When you boil all of those down, the real key themes that came through was a desire for increased frequencies, for an increased span of service, especially later into the evenings. People felt that some of the times that routes end right now didn't let them even start a trip on transit because they weren't sure they could get home. And then making sure there were opportunities to strengthen the connectivity into other regional services. And so all of those things, those existing conditions, looking at how routes are working right now, that feedback from folks throughout the county really come into some recommendations, and we can put them into some buckets. Some are route changes, and those are streamlining and simplifying routes, making them reliable for people. Some of those are frequency upgrades, trying to, over time, invest in bringing all routes up to a minimum standard and then continuing some incremental upgrades. And then service availability, what I just mentioned around later service hours, adding Sunday and weekend service where it doesn't currently exist, so that transit can be more frequent and reliable for folks. In thinking about routes, and we'll get into some of the route by route comments or descriptions as well to share those. But we see places like this where there's some duplicative service. So the 513 starts at Chuckanut Park and Ride and goes to March Point. The 40X starts at Skagit Station, also goes to March Point. The 40X and the 513 both running on about hour frequency. They're getting a different amount of riders right now, but they're getting a lot of those riders from the same point A to point B. They're serving some slightly different destinations in the middle, but a lot of overlap. So there's a little bit of duplication here of service that we might be able to streamline and make more better service for more people by thinking about how to undo some of these duplications. There's also some places where there's inconvenient connections between cities. A lot of people who we heard from are taking transit pretty far distances and have to make transfers right now. And so an example of this is getting from Cedro-Woolley to Mount Vernon. Right now you've got the 70X provides a direct service from Cedro Express to Mount Vernon, but it bypasses the Chuckanut Park and Ride. It also, in one direction, bypasses downtown Cedro-Woolley. So when it's going to the east, it doesn't go through sort of the center of town. The 301 connects Cedro-Woolley and Chuckanut Park and Ride, and the 305 connects to Skagit Valley College, which is one of the biggest ridership generators, one of the attractors in the county, but only connects there. And these are, again, they're at different frequencies. And so there's some opportunities to think about how to make some of the what could be some duplicative service help connect people better between cities in the county. And then we've got local service that is a little bit indirect sometimes. Sometimes there's a couple of places where there's one-way routes that work well if you're going in the direction of travel, but are not great if you're going upstream of that one direction. And we've got a real mix of frequencies and timing that makes it sometimes hard to make connections at key places like Skagit Station. So what we've done so far, and the recommendations that we'll talk through are being done, are sort of a long-range vision for some a resource-constrained environment. So there's some existing short-range changes that can be possible within existing resources, reallocating service and thinking about how to tweak some things. But some of what the long-range plan would require additional service. For any of these changes, we see the need for some targeted outreach before finalizing and implementing those route changes. So these are not changes that would happen overnight. There are things that might need some adjustment and some continued engagement, and then some of them also will require some capital investment, whether that's in things like stops, eventually to reach a full vision. Some of these would require additional service, additional coaches, and then potentially additional
Hold on 1 minute,
maintenance space.
Pause for another train.
Okay.
1 moment. Okay, go ahead and proceed. Thank you. Sorry for the
Sounds good.
interruption.
It's the audio is good. It doesn't come through over here, but I know how loud that room is when a train's going by. So thanks for flagging that. So
Sure.
what we've started to break this down into some short range, some mid range, and some long range potential changes. In the short range, we think there's an opportunity to share this long range vision with the public. You're the first part of some of that, sort of get last drafts of the plan, but then once it's final, share this plan with the public. Then eventually update routes and schedules and make some of those more minor changes. So in the short term, the bar chart is showing the amount of service hours that could be made. The yellow line is showing the number of peak vehicles that would be needed. So keeping the same number of peak vehicles, we can make some tweaks to address some of the things I talked about. And then there's this opportunity with funding to pilot on-demand service. And we think that Anacortes is probably the right place to pilot that service within the county. And that would be sort of door-to-door dispatched service within a zone, within a sort of a confined area, really trying to get people to other transit routes or to destinations within a somewhat constrained area around Anacortes. In the mid-range, there's some opportunities both on the facility side and then also with that some expansion in service hours and vehicles to increase the frequency. And then once we piloted on-demand service, think about how that could be used. If it proves useful, think about how it could be applied elsewhere in the county. And then in the long range, continue the expansion of fixed route service with additional, again, sort of really trying to reinvest in more frequent and reliable service. This is the service map. And for those aficionados of the Skagit Transit system now, you can probably spot some of these differences, but it looks largely the same. It's really covering the same ground overall, but with some tweaks that might make it a little bit easier for riders overall. And we can get into some more of those details. James can walk through some of those details as well. Just at a big picture, there's some places where there's some new service. That Anacortes on-demand zone that I mentioned, a new route 201, some routes that would see some significant changes, 40X, 101, 301, 305, and 410. Some with more minor changes, some with no change, and then some that would be discontinued or sort of folded into some of these more significant changes and or new service. So even within this, there is a range of where there's new additional service and also places where you would take some of the service hours and reallocate them to do other things. And I'll let James talk through that in just a second. Where we are on this journey is getting to this sort of between the second stop and the third stop. We've got some draft recommendations. We want to hear your feedback and other thoughts. We then are getting, we'll refine and seek approval through the board, and then begin the process of changing service, finalizing schedules, figuring out all the back end things, making sure that riders know about it, and then start the implementation process. That would be for the initial recommendations, and anything else that sort of flows from this long range plan, which hopefully is going to guide the agency for the next 5 to 10 years of where and how to think about changes in transit service. So with that, I will pause, see if there's any questions on this part so far, big picture on what we've done, where we're going, and then James can talk quickly about route recommendations, and there might be more questions at that point too.
Well, I do have a question for you, and I understand, of course, the first time we saw you guys was, in our CAC meeting was last year, and I believe it was last February. if I'm not mistaken. And at that time, we did turn in a sheet of recommendations about route and service area and so forth. And I wanted to know if you had anything to say about any of those recommendations that were turned in. I'm assuming that they've been kind of absorbed into the plan. But in viewing those, I just kind of wanted to get back, kind of look at those for the benefit of the CAC, so we can all see what's happened to the recommendations we turned in last year.
Yeah, that's great. And we did have those from last year, and you're absolutely right. It was February of last year that we really kicked off this process. And I would say that all of those have been incorporated in some way into the route recommendations that we can walk through. And we can provide you back with a little bit more specifics of exactly how. But those have been very important as we did this process, and then also got some things that were very aligned with that from our community engagement, and some different and new ideas. So it was all part of what led into this work.
Hello, this is Manette. Is there any discussion in your part or your co-workers' part about expanding the service area? There are some people who live on Feather Lane who are in Cedar Woolley who are cut out.
So we've mostly looked at adding frequency within the current area of service. Because when we looked at the additional, like, sort of when we looked at propensity for transit ridership, the populations that tend to ride transit more, we saw pretty good alignment with where service is right now. But we're always happy, like, part of what we're doing right now is trying to get feedback on whether we missed anything or whether there's additional locations. So and Cedar Woolley is a place where we've looked at a couple of different changes that all sort of work together, that I think would be good to sort of talk through, and then see if there's any additional places we should investigate.
All right.
Hey, any other questions?
I do want to add that Doris has joined us.
Good. Thank you, Doris. And they're taking questions right now. So does anybody else have questions?
I'm just curious about some of the changes that were looked at, suggested. I mean, they take ridership into consideration, among other things, when they're doing that. Because I see Woolley, is going to be cut in a couple of places.
Yeah, and we wanted to list the routes that we're going to see changes. Not all of those, I would say, are cuts, because some places where there's existing service, if we do some slight changes, it might actually end up providing more or better service to some places. It would just end up being different. So maybe that's a great lead-in. We did look at ridership and sort of where routes are seeing higher ridership per hour, and how some of the service is allocated across the county, and as we thought about some of these changes. So
I know, I mean, it changes year to year too, right?
Yes, my name is Manette. That's one thing I hate to hear is cutting service.
Yeah, so and I'd say, like, really we're not recommending any cuts to service. We're recommending in some places some changes to service that keep the service hours the same, keep the number of vehicles in service the same, and change some of the connections a little bit. But we're happy to talk through that and get your feedback on how to, if we've missed the mark on things, get your feedback. So maybe just to make sure we keep you all on schedule, I'll turn it over to James to talk through some of those changes, and then have a discussion about those.
All right, thank you very much, Sam. Thank you all for your questions. So the way that we're going to organize the discussion on going into some of the more finer details of the different route recommendations is we're going to focus that on 3 different areas of the county. We're going to start off with the central part of the county, looking more closely at Burlington and Mount Vernon. This is real important because this area right in the center of the county, it accounts for about 40% of the service, but about 50% of the overall ridership. And there are some major destinations. Sam mentioned one of those earlier, the Skagit Valley College. Also, the Walmart Supercenter is a major destination within this part of the county. And it's also anchored by a couple of really important facilities. One of those is the Skagit Station. Then there's also the series of park and rides from Chuckanut at the northern end of Burlington, South Mount Vernon, and then the Cedro-Woolley Park and Ride. Those are all real important connection points for riders. So as we look at the central county, the most important thing here is trying to simplify and streamline service. We want to make it easier to understand, not just for existing riders, but also potential new riders in the future. And this can be young people, young adults who are taking transit for the first time. It's people who are maybe moving away from driving and want to look at transit as an alternative to getting around. We want the system to be real easy to understand and intuitive. So a lot of it has to do with simplifying the routes, but also what we've heard from riders through the community engagement process is that frequency is very important. Frequency and hours of service, making sure that it's available whenever people need it and that you can connect from one route to another and not spend a lot of time waiting. So those are 2 of the primary objectives for the central area. And we're comparing the existing routes on the left side of the screen. You can see some of the routes, they're designed as loops, or they have different segments that they go off of the primary route and then come back. So they can be a little bit tricky, especially if you're trying to navigate the system for the first time. And then on the right side of the screen, we show the recommended route alignments. And as Sam mentioned earlier, we're trying to do more with the same amount of resources. When we say resources, we mean buses, drivers, and overall hours of service. And we're also trying to preserve the coverage or the footprint of where the routes are at. Some of the most important things that we heard from the riders, we want the service to be more frequent, more direct. So we try to accomplish that with some of these proposed changes. Not shown here on this particular screen is also the 80X and the 90X, which go north to Bellingham and south to Everett. And we're looking to add a couple of stops on those express routes also. Some of the bigger benefits here would be providing service from Burlington that runs 2-way to the Walmart Supercenter rather than a larger loop route. And that would also be upgraded from every hour to every 30 minutes. So Burlington would see some major improvements there. And then on the Mount Vernon side, we would straighten out the routes and have more 2-way service as well, keeping in mind that both the Skagit Valley College and the Walmart are big destinations, but also thinking about some of the other places that people are trying to go to within Mount Vernon. Next slide, please. Shifting over to the East County, one of the things that was heard during the last CAC meeting in February from some of the recommendations that you all provided was the 70X and improving the number of trips on that service. So currently that's a very infrequent route. It has buses that run every 3 hours. So we want that to be a big improvement right out of the gates. We look to upgrade the 70X to every 90 minutes. So we'd see twice as many trips throughout the day. And what we also heard when we were out, Haley and I at Concrete Community Center, was that getting from Concrete and some of the farther reaches, eastern part of the county, to Mount Vernon can be a challenge. So we're also recommending extending Route 305, which currently runs between Cedro-Woolley and Skagit Valley College, and taking it all the way to Skagit Station. We'd have to add a vehicle to that route, but that's where we're doing this shifting of service from one place to another to try and benefit the greatest number of riders as possible, while also attracting new riders. So the pink route shown on the right side of the screen is the proposed 305, and it would run from Cedro-Woolley down to Clear Lake, and then make its way into Mount Vernon, go by the college to Skagit Station. She also mentioned that, in addition to hearing from you all and from riders, it's also important that we talk to staff. So they had a lot of really good insight into what are some of the operational challenges, and we try to incorporate that into the recommendations as well. And then lastly, we also look at demographics just to understand if there's any gaps in service to make sure that there's no neighborhoods or pockets of transit need that we're missing. One other minor change, or I shouldn't say minor change, but one other change in this eastern part of the county is the route shown in brown, the 301. That's a route that runs between Cedro-Willie Park and Ride and Chuckanut Park and Ride. We'd extend that west out to the airport area and then east into both the Job Corps as well as the Upper Skagit Reservation. Next slide, please. Now we're going to focus on West County, so moving west of interstate. One of the biggest opportunities here to improve overall countywide connectivity is extending the 40X, one of the 4 express routes, from March Point Park and Ride all the way to Anacortes. So right now that route runs from Skagit Station to March Point, and it would go all the way to Anacortes to the 10th Street location, where people who are trying to get to Anacortes, whether it be for jobs or vice versa, if you live in Anacortes and you're trying to get to Mount Vernon, you'd have a 1-seat ride now and not have to make a transfer at March Point. One of the places where we're looking to shift resources would be from the 513. That's a route that runs between Chuckanut and March Point also, but has very low ridership, and Sam referenced this one earlier. We'd look to make that eastern part of that route, the 513, incorporate that into the 301. So that's one change. And then something that would be new for the Anacortes area would be on-demand service. So we're recommending that as a pilot service. This would be different than fixed route. It would be a smaller vehicle that can navigate some of the smaller streets within the neighborhoods in Anacortes. And it would operate similar to paratransit in that it can get closer to where people live and where they're traveling to, rather than have people go to a bus stop. So a lot more similar to paratransit, and we're calling that on-demand service. Yeah. Sam, is there anything you want to add to those couple of slides?
No, I think you did a great job. I know it's a lot to take in too, so folks may have some detailed questions. As I mentioned too, we'll make sure we share this slide deck out with everybody, and it might be that there's some further discussion that folks want to have or questions for us as well.
Does anyone have any questions for James?
I did see that Doris had something in the chat. I can, yeah. Doris, do you want to say what you chatted, put in your chat?
Question about if you discontinue the 206 up the hill from downtown Mount Vernon to the high school and the hospital, what is the replacement?
Oh,
Yeah,
that's it.
I didn't hear if you just did like Cedro and Anacortes. Were you going to give a little talk about the recommended changes for Mount Vernon?
Yeah, let me back up to those.
Yeah, and the 206, the segment that it serves, it's not really, it shows up here on the existing as that brown route on the left side of the screen. But Sam, if you could advance 2 more slides to the east, it's kind of hard to see because it's zoomed out, but on the right side of the screen, the proposed the recommended 305 route would actually serve some of those same areas that are currently served by the 206. Not every single one of those route or street segments, but it would serve Waugh Road between College Way and Division Street. We do not have it going to the east a little bit, where currently it goes. I assume by the hill you're talking about Waugh Road. Is that correct?
Talking about what?
Are you referring to Waugh Road?
No, I live right up the hill on Division. I take a 206 to get home. First, there's the stop on North 7th Street? Or North 5th that goes for the high school. No, comes up the viaduct, it goes up and it stops and it goes to the high school, and then it turns and goes up Division, and then the next stop, that's where I go. I don't see anything I it's just, I'm looking for the service for right up the hill, because kids got to get to the high school, and their parents do sometimes. So,
Yes,
Yeah.
it's not showing up on this particular map, but it would be included if that pink line. Yeah, maybe that system map's the best one, Sam.
Yeah, it might go back to the one that shows everything, and apologies here, because this one's a little bit small. I'm not sure that I can zoom in here, but I think that the combination of the new 305 or the extended 305 that James mentioned and the new 201 would be serving that area, but that's a great question. We can go back and
I mean, I think I must have missed the intro to the 201 because I was a few minutes late. If you covered all this right in the very beginning. Okay, because I mean, and also you're taking out the service that went over to Blackburn. That's on your, that's not on there anymore. And I think that that's essential service. And I was actually advocating for the Blackburn and 13th service to go past Hillcrest Park because there's no bus service to Hillcrest Park. And so the 206, the people that live up on the hill there, I don't know, maybe we have to look at it a little bit closely, but it looks like you're reducing service, taking out the 206 loop that goes south on LaVenture, coming around the school, goes down Blackburn, turns back up 18th. And I mean, that's a whole big neighborhood, and there's 2 schools or 3 schools right there. So I think it's very important to make sure that there's bus service to these schools, because if you have a parent who needs to come to the school, either to pick up their kid or to come to a meeting or something, and there's no transportation, that's not helpful. I think all the schools should receive transportation. And that the one, I mean, I can't really bring this any closer, but I was living over at 16th and Blackburn for 2 years. There was nothing there. The most closest stop was 18th and Blackburn, where the little grocery store is, across the street from the school. And you're just eliminating that. There's nothing down to Blackburn at all now. It just goes to LaVenture, and then I can't really see what street this turns on. Anyway, I just don't think it's a good idea. If you're talking about kind of pulling the services back in, maybe that 206 loop will be duplicated, but I don't know what you're talking about. So I guess I'll just stay tuned for more information.
No, that's a really good comment. And
yeah, if you want people to take the bus or bring their bike on the bus, there has to be some service to the area.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually advocating for a bus down Blackburn from LaVenture down to, well, what's that? Well, it's Old 99. That's where the 202 goes. You can't get down and up that hill. You can't walk up and down that hill. It's too big a hill. So in order to get from down, like on Old 99, maybe like where the Bargains Galore is, or there's some trailer mobile home parks down there and stuff like that. You have to go all the way into Mount Vernon and come back up, and it takes a long time. So this is always, and unless you wanted to start some on-demand service so people could call you and say, I need a ride from here to here, that would be excellent for some of these areas, because nobody takes the bus because it takes too long to get there, in their opinion.
Needs to be there anyway.
And I just really think that Hillcrest Park would be a very good destination. Lots of people go there to play pickleball, and there's stuff going on at Hillcrest Lodge. There's 2 little playgrounds. And there's never been any stop there, so people can't get to the park if they don't have a car.
Okay,
Well-
go ahead.
I would say, Doris, thank you.
So,
I don't expect you to answer all these questions right this second. I'm just saying. And the other thing I have about is the 207 that goes down Freeway Drive to go to Walmart, and then it goes up to the YMCA. And I'm not sure if that's been changed or not. But I can't. The Freeway Drive.
Was that on the list to be eliminated?
The 201 would serve the Walmart.
where would it go from downtown to Walmart and then where?
It would actually mostly operate along LaVenture, but it's the green route that you're seeing.
The 201 would get
So-
up to the green route to Reventure. So if it goes up Hogue Road and serves the YMCA,
Section to LaVenture.
Yes, it goes to the YMCA 201.
I couldn't hear you. Is that you, Cheryl, or?
That was Cheryl. She was just confirming where the 201 went to the Y.
Yeah, the Hogue Road, it would still serve the stops there, just south of the YMCA.
Mhm.
But it would not operate along a freeway drive.
Well, I don't
And I
care if we go to
believe-
Walmart and the YMCA on the same trip. I mean, I don't care about serving Walmart because I was around at the CAC when Walmart would not allow a stop at the Walmart. So people have to walk like a whole big long parking lot, a quarter of a mile from the bus stop to get to Walmart. To me, that's not service anyway. And they declined to have a stop. So why should we put them on our banner? So whatever.
But it's there now.
I think somebody else on the virtual started to speak.
Yeah, this is Irene. Can you hear me on the phone?
Yes. Yes, we
Okay,
can.
so I have a question about the on-demand service in Anacortes and what that looks like. Is it door to door, or is it door to transit stop? Or, I mean, do people get to use this like a taxi service? End of question.
Yeah. I don't know if you can see, there's sort of a light purple area here.
I
Which is-
can't, I'm sorry, I'm on
Okay.
the phone, but.
Oh, no problem.
but-
So,
And that
um,
may be why I don't see it.
so what we've looked at so the idea with on-demand service is that it is usually accessible van service. So it works for people with mobility challenges. Not like we're not talking about a full-sized transit bus that you could request either through an app or through calling a customer service line, and you could get door-to-door service within a zone. So within sort of greater downtown Anacortes. And this is sort of, we've tried to take the existing service area of the 409 and expand that a little bit. And this is sort of a trade-off, and the reason why piloting a zone of this size would, we're sort of recommending that, is that it would let people sort of expect a 20 to 30 minute or 20-ish minute wait for a vehicle or for a ride, and serve that with a couple of vehicles. So manage the operational cost for Skagit Transit, but also have some level of service that it could be somewhat reliable. And within that zone, you could go from point A to point B and be picked up and dropped off in that way.
I see. Okay, so it is limited then to people with some mobility.
No, it's
needs.
accessible for people with mobility challenges, but it'll be open for everybody. So it's different from paratransit in that way, that it would be open to everybody, and sort of serve in this in between what fixed route service would be, where there might not be enough riders to justify having a bus come by every 60 minutes or something like that, but there's enough destinations and might actually be able to provide everybody with better service with a more flexible model.
I see. So then why was this area determined to have a need for this kind of service? Was it because they had very limited bus service?
They have limited bus service, and some of the streets are difficult to operate on with a larger bus. The grid there is not quite as established as the street network as places like Mount Vernon. And they're narrower streets, but they're still important destinations. There's a senior center, there's Island Hospital, getting closer to downtown Anacortes. You have a lot of businesses, but you also have a lot of parking, which makes it difficult for a larger bus, diagonal parking. So it's an area that has transit demand. Anacortes also has a much higher population of older adults than the other communities within Skagit County. So looking at both the demographics of it, as well as the way that the streets are designed and the elevation, there's hills. It's difficult to serve with a big bus, but we could serve it much easier with a smaller vehicle that can navigate some of those streets and get people to those important destinations.
Okay, thank you.
And I'd also say this isn't the only place in the county that where this might be a successful service model. And what we've seen in other places, including other places sort of in the Puget Sound area, King County Metro runs their Metro Flex program, where there's multiple of these zones that are all served under the umbrella of King County Metro. But it is a pretty substantial investment of time and resources for Skagit Transit. And so piloting in one area would make some sense before trying it in some other places. And then the existing 409 route, even though Anacortes does have, as James said, a lot of destinations and a fair amount of density, the 409 is a relatively low ridership route right now. And so taking some of those resources, reallocating those to some of these other changes that we've talked about to be able to provide some better, more frequent service elsewhere in the county and pilot on-demand service, which again would require additional resources to be able to do. That's why that sort of starting point is Anacortes. But then if it's successful, it could be something that could be replicated in other cities and towns across the county.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. I do have a question. I'd like to ask it just in case I forget. we get to talking, but if members have questions as things go along, or just have something that they thought of that wasn't brought up today, what is the appropriate way to reach you guys? Do we do it through Skagit Transit, or what's the best way to get some more information to you or get some questions answered?
I'd say that Cheryl passes everything that you tell her on to us.
Okay.
So that is an awesome way to do it. And then that way she knows as well. As long as she is okay with being the conduit, then I'd say that's the easiest way.
I am. Get prepared in case there's any other questions. Okay, thank you for that. I just wanted to clarify that for sure.
Thank you. Okay, I will stop sharing now, but appreciate the questions and the discussion.
This is Manette. I'd like to ask a question concerning the 90X. Are you going to try to expand more service with that between here and Snohomish County?
It's a good question. So, and we heard a lot from people who came to our public engagement and gave us comments about the importance of the 90X, especially, during this time from over the last year. Now Sound Transit operates up to Linwood, and we heard sort of increasing interest in getting service to Everett. So our goal for all of the connector routes is to try to get towards hourly service on everything. And James mentioned sort of even the 70X, which is 3 hours right now. Maybe the first step would be going twice as much service, but then eventually getting to hourly. The 90X also sort of making sure that we're at hourly service and trying to get to a good span of service and make sure it's reliable for people. The other thing on the 90X in the longer term, and James mentioned this briefly, is that Community Transit continues to invest in the Smoky Point Transit Center. And we know there's a lot of job growth in that part of Snohomish County as well. And so there is a long-term opportunity to serve that transit center And then depending, Snohomish County is talking about a Gold Line bus rapid transit getting from downtown Everett to Smoky Point. As soon as 2029, that's dependent on a lot of things that they have to figure out, but that would go through North Everett, sort of the Broadway corridor. At that point, there's an opportunity, if there's a place for Skagit Transit to meet a fast, frequent, reliable community transit service at Smoky Point Transit Center, for then the 90X to continue straight into Everett Station from there and save time for people riding. Most of the people who are riding the 90X are getting to Everett Station and downtown Everett. Some people are there are some destinations along that Broadway corridor, but the community transit service at that point would be better than it is now, sort of 10 to 15 minute service on a rapid bus / bus rapid transit. So that's a long answer to your question. I think there's some really good midterm opportunities for improvements to the 90X that make it more reliable and get people to Everett.
Yes. I have family in Snohomish County, and I'd like to be able to go see them if I'd like to on the bus. And just take advantage of other opportunities.
Absolutely. And I'd say with the Linwood extension of Link and eventually the Everett extension, community transit continues to invest more service hours in Snohomish County. And so getting people into that system, and I think that'll open up a lot of destinations for people on transit and a lot better service.
I'd like to see Sound Transit trains up here in the Skagit Station.
We'll get there.
Yeah, I'd like up and
Sounds like a work in progress.
Yeah, it sure is.
Okay.
And I appreciate that, you're forward thinking.
Okay. All right. So I really want to thank you guys for coming to present to us. This is a rare opportunity. I wanted to take as much time as we could to get all the questions answered. And moving forward, if anybody's got questions or oh, wait a minute, I forgot to say this. Turn it into Cheryl, and she will make sure that they get that. And I want to thank all three of you so much for taking your time to come to us and talk to us about this plan. And I look forward to hearing from you again soon.
Appreciate you. Yeah.
All I've got to say is, have you ever tried to ride from Mount Vernon to Everett on the link to Linwood and get to Seattle? Please do it. See how it feels. Get on the bus at Mount Vernon at 6:50 in the morning and see how long it takes you to get to Northgate. And see if you would do that as a commuter. That's what, I mean, none of the things that I've said so far in other things have ever been left. My suggestion is to do an express route to the South Everett Park and Ride, where people can get a faster bus to Linwood, because all of this is just kind of moot if it's just going to go back to Everett, and then you still have to wait for the bus to go to Linwood. So if we could articulate by getting a bus that stops at Marysville, so you could get an express from Marysville to Linwood or something, get creative.
And I'm glad you brought that up again, Doris. I mean, this is an issue actually that I first heard about in 2021. I looked back at our minutes and we were doing all this compilation, and it really is something that it eventually needs to be addressed. And I'm assuming that something like this is in the works. Is that correct?
So I would say in parallel to the work that we've been doing on the long range plan, we've also been working with the adjacent transit operators, all the way up to Bellingham and WTA, Community Transit, Island Transit, trying to look at some of these connections across. One of the challenges for Skagit Transit to go really far into Snohomish County is to make routes that are able to be served and aren't too long for drivers and are able to be operated. So I think that we haven't recommended new different express service. We've been in this sort of resource constrained environment or limited growth environment, we've tried to look at reinvesting service within Skagit County primarily, except for the strengthening the routes that are already there. But that is, I think that's something for us to continue to consider, and maybe something new as an opportunity down the line would be great.
And I think it's really a good idea to continue, anybody that's got concerns on routes, service, et cetera, it's good to continue to monitor that, continue to contact Cheryl, find out what you can find out about status updates, and we'll take it from there. Yeah, and thank you again so much for presenting to us. We really appreciate your time and your expertise.
Thank you all.
Okay, cool. Oh, sure, no problem. All right, moving on. I had a legislative update that I'm gonna actually table till next time in the interest of time, because I thought the meeting with the consultants was very important. So I'm gonna do that, and we're gonna go ahead and move on to federal executive orders, the freeze, the federal contacts and so forth. I think Cheryl is going to be doing the staff reporting, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, I'll cover things really quick.
Over to you then.
In the interest of time, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so Skagit Transit received a $19.5 million grant from the federal government, from the U.S. Department of Transportation. That is kind of in limbo right now. At one point, it was put into a freeze, and the freeze was rescinded. So we're just waiting to hear when more will go forward with that. And then I wanted to cover ridership. So this month in January, our fixed route total riders was 41,825. And our paratransit total was 6,337. That's for the month of January. Just wanted to mention, we continue to look at June for our educational trip. And there's some events that are coming up or have occurred. One was at Madison School for migrant families. We were support for the point in time count. We're doing a transit resource and support event this week. And then the LaConner Senior Center, BJ and I will be presenting bag lunch tips and tricks on Tuesday.
Okay.
So the committee reports next.
Yes, and do we have any? Like for any fixed route reports? And if hearing none, stop me if you have some, but otherwise, we'll move over to the round table and see if anybody has anything they would like to bring up at the meeting today.
I moved a bench from by my house. I prefer,
Well, what happened to her?
I prefer, there used to be a bus stop there right on Fur and 18th.
Oh, they took that bench out?
Yeah, the bench is gone. They finally took it.
I don't know.
Okay, is it supposed to be gone?
It was, it's scattered.
I
I
don't
think
know.
it was scattered.
I don't know if we took it or the city took it.
Somebody took it. It's not there anymore.
Okay,
Okay, so it needs to be replaced?
Yes, maybe.
No, it's from a bus stop that was moved from service years ago.
Oh.
Oh,
It was up there.
okay, I thought, do we need to do anything about this?
No.
Okay, all right. So maybe just really quickly because, well, first, does anybody else have anything about roundtable? Roundtable. Not round table.
Valentine's.
Not a round table. Well, maybe I will go through this really quick. It's not gonna take very long, but on this legislation that I wanted to let you guys know about, I've been kind of following this, and we have one little piece, and I'll make it quick. It's HB 1418. And again, it's 1418. And this is a bill that's adding 2 voting members if passed. It would be adding 2 voting members to the transit user governing body for public transportation benefit areas. That means the PTBA. And what that basically is, it's a bill that's going to allow 2 ridership members to be on transit boards. And so it's really been sponsored, it's been brought up by Disability Rights of Washington. And if it passes, it gets our foot in the door as far as able to have representation on boards. And what we could do is just go ahead and make, just make friends with all of our legislators and hopefully get them on board to recruit to eventually have 2 ridership members on the board. There's lots of sponsors. Gosh, there's Timmons and Rammel and Durer, in the House. Timmons from Whatcom County. So, if you're interested in this bill, HB 1418, definitely get on leg.wa.gov. And what DRW says about it, disability rights, they say nobody wants transit to succeed more than the people who rely on it day in and day out, but our voices are continually left out of decision-making processes. In Washington, a public transit benefit area, PTBA, is a governing body established by state code to create and run transit agencies. 31 of the Washington State 38 transit agencies are governed under the PTBA structure. By Washington state law, these transit agency boards are composed of local elected officials, many of whom rarely ride transit. Our proposed legislation would amend Washington state law to allow PTBAs to appoint 2 voting members to the governing boards, one who is a transit rider and one from an organization that serves transit reliant communities. So that's basically what that is. So I will let you know, I actually testified and it passed to the House. It's on its way to the Senate. And so there's a lot of push to have this done. One of the intercity transit actually is functioning with ridership on their board. They're doing very well. And so we could maybe take some things from their playbook that could apply to Skagit Transit down the road. But basically, I just want to let you know about the legislation alert. That's what I have. And so I'm done with that. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to have in the meeting? If not, who would like to adjourn the meeting?
I second it for first.
I second.
Dave and Chris, second respectively. Okay, and our next meeting is going to be March the 11th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Yes, you.
Manette, praying
Hey.
for more and
Meeting adjourned, and thank you all for attending.
thank you.
Thanks very much. And thank you